Welcome to Grad-post. I'm your host, Brian S. Mitchell, and we're here to talk about life before, during, and after graduate school, and whether an advanced degree is right for you. I'll draw upon my experiences as a graduate dean and research mentor, as well as my network of students, colleagues, and experts to bring you the most complete information on graduate education that I can. We continue today with our series on preparing your grad school application. We talked in episode 16 about how undergraduate research can be your superpower that sets your application apart from the others, and in the previous episode, how to tweak your GPA to get every 10th of a point out of it. In Season 1, I talked about deciding on whether an advanced degree is right for you in episode 12, and the pros and cons of online degrees in episode 13. We even discussed broadly in episode 7 some considerations in selecting a graduate school. Today, we'll expand upon those topics and talk about some aspects of graduate schools that might be perplexing even to domestic students, but especially to those of you unfamiliar with the United States higher education system, the international student. Graduate study in the United States is often referred to as postgraduate education elsewhere in the world. This confusion in terminology is just one of the things you will have to get used to if you are considering getting your advanced degree in the U.S. Another point of confusion is where you get your postgraduate degree, often called graduate school here in the States, when it is not a separate entity in most cases, but part of a college and university, just like where you are obtaining your bachelor's degree. We also don't attend university, but go to college here. But now I'm parsing out British English phraseology from American English. That's a relevant topic too, since you probably learned British English as your second or third language, but we'll go down that rabbit hole some other day. Be sure to Google going down a rabbit hole if you're unfamiliar with that trope. I'll try to avoid them from here on. Let's start with the most general of overviews. How many four-year colleges and universities do you think there are in the United States? And no fair Googling. Even those of you already enrolled at a U.S. college will probably get this one wrong. 1,000? 2,000? Try 2,628 to be exact as of 2022-23 statistics from the National Center for Education Statistics. And that's down from over 3,000 just 10 years earlier. Now, how many of those four-year colleges do you think are public? Over 50%? Not even close. Only 782, or less than 30% of them. That means that over 70% of the four-year degree-granting institutions of higher education in the United States are private. Many of you may come from countries that have both public and private educational institutions, but the views of their legitimacy and quality of education can vary widely around the world. I won't try to cover all those views here, but in the United States, the public-private distinction is mostly related to where their operating expenses come from. Public universities get some money, not nearly enough, from the state governments in which they reside for their operations, paying faculty salaries, keeping the lights on, providing reliable internet service to tens of thousands of people, and so on. Private institutions get their money from other sources, primarily from tuition. There's also endowments that they have accumulated over time, but the percentage of operating expenses that come from endowments is surprisingly low, less than 10% most of the time. But the differences in educational quality are not really related to being public or private. There are great public institutions, just like there are world-renowned private institutions. There are also some of lower quality in both categories. You might think the source of operating funds has an impact on your graduate school financing, but not necessarily. While the cost of attendance at the undergraduate level is certainly important and is a major driver in student debt, at the graduate level it's much different. Tuition is still a key consideration in some practice-oriented programs, especially at the master's level, but in most research degree programs, it's a non-issue. That's because tuition is often waived or is paid by someone else like your research advisor off of grants. I've often said that if you were able to teleport into a graduate school lab, lounge, or library anywhere in the country, you'd be hard-pressed to tell whether it is a public or private institution just by looking around and asking people about their everyday experiences. There are certainly differences between wealthy institutions and less well-off institutions, But the quality of the graduate experience is usually driven by factors other than public or private. In either case, most institutions are nonprofit organizations. That is, every penny that they generate must be balanced by an expenditure. No monies go to stakeholders, owners, or board members. There are indeed for-profit institutions, and you may be wondering where they fit in this landscape. There are only about 300 for-profit colleges left as of 2022-23, down dramatically from 782 a decade earlier. Most have closed. Those that continue to exist are part of that private four-year category I described earlier, but make up only about 12% overall of the four-year colleges and universities in the United States. This is no comment on the quality of their degrees, just statistics. There's a place for them, particularly those of you interested in distance or part-time education. That still leaves over 2,300 institutions to pick from for your advanced degree. How do you narrow that down? We talked in Episode 7 and Episode 12 about finding an institution and locality that fits your lifestyle and values. But we can further categorize these 2,300 institutions in ways that may be of benefit to you in your search. The most relevant categorization scheme to this discussion is the Carnegie classification system. The Carnegie Foundation is a non-governmental, non-profit organization that has been classifying institutions of higher education for many decades. Its classification system, now done in collaboration with the American Council on Education, ACE, is not officially used by government agencies, but it is widely used in academic circles in the United States, so it's worth being aware of. There are several categories of institutions, but for our purposes, the two main categories of interest are master's colleges and universities, that's one category, and doctoral universities, that's another category. Most of these institutions are part of the 2,300 four-year institutions mentioned earlier, but there are a few that offer only master's or only doctorate degrees, like independent schools of business or medicine. There are important subcategories within each of these two categories. Within master's colleges and universities, there are small, medium, and large institutions, based primarily on the number of degrees they award each year. There are 159 institutions in the small category, 185 institutions in the medium category, and 325 institutions in the large category. As with all other categories we've discussed so far, there are a mixture of public and private institutions. The doctoral universities use a different categorization system, based not just on numbers of degrees awarded, but also on the size of their research portfolios. There's a lot of history, controversy, and ambiguity in how these categories are used, but for our purposes, we'll use the current system, which has three subcategories of simply doctor professional universities, of which there are 187, high research activity institutions, of which there are 133, and very high research activity institutions, of which there are 146. What does this all mean to you? Well, if you've never heard of all 1,135 institutions in these two broad Carnegie categories, I include myself, then it means you have to be careful when selecting an institution to apply to. Let me give you an example. Let's say you want to do your graduate studies in San Diego, California. Maybe you have an aunt who will let you live there for free, or you just really like surfing in your off time. There are 14 colleges with the word San Diego in their title. There are well over 20 higher education institutions in the San Diego area, but let's focus on those with San Diego in their title. Of the 14, a whopping 6 of them are for-profit institutions. This fact runs counter to what I described earlier, with only 12% of four-year colleges being private for-profit, but apparently San Diego is a hotspot for online institutions. Again, there's a place for these institutions in the graduate education universe, but if you are coming halfway around the world to go to graduate school, you're probably not looking for an institution that is primarily online. There are also a couple of schools on our list that don't offer graduate degrees, so by the time you get down to the institutions that are most likely to offer an advanced degree in your area of interest, whose programs are primarily full-time and in-person, you are looking at 3 similar sounding institutions: San Diego State University, the University of San Diego, and the University of California, San Diego. All good institutions, but all very different. San Diego State University is a high research activity doctoral university in the Carnegie classification system. It has professional programs and Division I athletics. It is primarily a non-residential campus at the undergraduate level, meaning that a large percentage of its undergraduates are from the San Diego area and live off campus. It is a large public institution with more than 37,000 students enrolled, of which about 4,500 are graduate students as of fall 2023. It offers a wide variety of master's degree programs and 19 doctoral programs, primarily in professional areas like education. What makes it somewhat unique is that it is a Hispanic Serving Institution, or HSI. I'll do a separate podcast on minority serving institutions, but this is an important designation for several reasons we'll go into at some other time. The similar sounding named University of San Diego is also a high research activity institution, also has professional programs, but it has Division I AA athletics. Why do I mention the athletics programs classifications for these institutions? First of all, because college athletics is an important part of American culture. Second, because some students, even graduate students, can find funding through athletic scholarships. And third, because athletics and research classifications are more related than you might think. Listen to episode 14 for more details and background on athletics program classifications. Back to the University of San Diego, unlike the other two institutions we'll discuss, it is a private institution and has much smaller enrollments with 8,800 students overall, of which about 2,300 are graduate students. In addition to some of the same professional programs as San Diego State University, it has a law school. Moving on to the University of California, San Diego, or UCSD for short, it is part of the enormous University of California system that includes such schools as Berkeley and UCLA. So, it's a public institution and is in the very high research Carnegie classification. How high? It had $1.8 billion, that's with a B, of sponsored research funding in 2023. It has a wide range of professional programs including medicine, public health, pharmacy, as well as unique graduate programs like oceanography. It has about 34,000 undergraduate students, the same size as San Diego State, but many more graduate students at 7,720, and has Division I athletics programs. Okay, thanks for the statistics and school fight songs, Grad Dean, but what about rankings, you're asking? Look them up yourself if you want. They're pretty meaningless in my book. There are university rankings, then there's program rankings, the latter of which can be difficult to find except for the most highly rated programs. They can also be behind paywalls, which is ridiculous. I've discussed finding the right institution for you before, so I won't reiterate that here. Suffice it to say that you may pick one of these institutions if you want a master's education degree, another if you want a PhD in nursing, and yet another if you want either level of advanced degree in material science. Look, I'm not here to promote one university, program, or city over another. I'm just trying to help you avoid confusion, and worse, regret. The last thing you want to say to yourself halfway through your graduate school experience is, "This is not the experience I expected or wanted." Do your homework. But know that there are more institutions offering graduate degrees in the United States than you thought, and some of them sound pretty similar. It's even fair to say that there are still predatory institutions out there that purposefully pick names like other well-known institutions just to pique your interest. If you receive promotional materials from any institution in the United States, I recommend you first go to the Carnegie Classification website to get basic information on the institution. Go to carnegieclassifications.acenet.edu. You won't get any ranking, tuition, or job placement information, but you will be able to determine what type of institution this is. That's information you won't even get on the institution's website. Then go to its website and learn more about the great programs, culture, and job prospects it has to offer. There's much more to know about U.S. graduate schools, including what's called land-grant status, endowment levels, accreditation status, as well as other Carnegie classifications like community engagement. Look for upcoming bonus episodes on these topics and more. Thank you for joining me today. Join me again in 2 weeks for an interview with Dr. Vicki Johnson of ProFellow.com. She'll be talking about funding for your graduate school experience and the great resources on fellowships and assistantships at ProFellow. Here's a teaser from her interview.
You really should figure out which schools offer funding in the form of assistantships and fellowships first. That could really determine your list of schools.
Follow me so that you get that reminder. Remember that all of the links provided in my podcast are available at Grad-post.com. That's GRAD-POST. There you'll find additional resources and information to help you plan your adventure for your advanced degree. It's as true in the country you live in as here in the United States. Every degree counts.